Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Making It in Holland. If you're new here, this is a channel all about expat life and entrepreneurship here in the Netherlands. Today I have a special episode for you with Shou Xin Wu, who is the founder of Real Estate Masterclass. I got the honor to speak with him a few weeks ago all about what you need to have in place to start to invest in real estate as a beginner here in the Netherlands. This was a highly requested topic from many of you. I know you all have questions like, I need a lot of money to start with real estate investing. How do I even get going? What are my options like? Sushin is going to be answering all of these questions in an interview that we did together. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this video. If you do, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you want more of this type of content. With the introduction out of the way, I really hope you enjoyed the interview and I will see you in the next episode.
My name is Sushin. I'm 32 years old. I live in Rotterdam and work in Amsterdam. I work at a large IT company and I started investing in real estate last year, 2019. I bought my first buy-to-let apartment, so basically an apartment that I bought to rent out on 25th January 2019. And I've exceeded that actually in a very short period. So I own over more than 10, actually made more than 15 properties by now. And as you said, I'm the founder of the Real Estate Masterclass, and the Real Estate Masterclass is a company that I started this year, where we started teaching people on how to invest in real estate in the Netherlands. And one of the core beliefs that we have is that anyone, regardless of your situation, can start investing in real estate. You don't need to be someone who's a millionaire or have a lot of money. And our participants prove that time and time again, and all of our coaches as well.
That's so fascinating. I think a lot of the misconception we have is that to be able to invest in real estate, you have to have a lot of money saved up and you need to be having a lot of income every time. So what are some things that you could tell to my audience who might not really know how to go about doing that? What is the first step that they can take towards investing in real estate?
Oh, that's a good question. So there are many steps you could take, right? So understanding, the area you want to buy, the strategy, how you want to get it done. But I think two core components for any real estate investor is, having the deal and the money in essence. And let me just share a bit more about that. So what I mean by a deal is basically a property that you want to buy. And what we teach people is actually to buy property below market value. We noticed that, a lot of people, of course, are focused on online websites such as Funda. And then they determine, wow, it's kind of expensive, right? That's what a lot of people respond to. That's the first initial reaction. But what we do teach other people, our participants, future real estate investors, is actually to buy properties outside, channels or sites where there's a lot of traction, because, those sites have, of course, in a way it causes a lot of competition. But if you look at real estate investors, they buy what we call off-the-market deals. And those are pretty much apartments, houses, real estate objects that will never see the daylight on an online website, for instance. And so what we learn from experience is that you could easily have sometimes 10 to 35% below market value when you start being a real estate investor and find properties that are 10 to 35% cheaper than that's on online channels.
Yeah. So
that's the first step, and the second part is financing. So how to get the money and stuff.
I definitely saw, and I totally agreed with, when I saw, all these properties being listed on funda.nl. For those of you who don't know, that's basically the biggest website, biggest platform where you can go and search for rental properties as well as properties to purchase. My first reaction was like, these are just way too expensive and there's no way I can afford it. And then I did watch the webinar and you were talking about ways you can go about indeed finding these properties that are off the market. Is there one specific platform that you could recommend to my viewers that they could start to investigate if they're serious about this? Of course, if they want to know more, check out the webinar, link in the description, of course. But I'm very curious if you have a practical thing that they can walk away with today.
Yeah, so there is not one platform where you can find all the off-the-market deals, because then you would create, of course, a second Funda, you could say. But there are many practices that a real estate investor actually does to get his or her off-the-market deals. I think one of the most famous ways is, of course, flyering. So literally create a flyer where you describe your intention, etc., and then fly it through the neighborhood. really there is response to those kind of flyers, to which you can decide to buy it yourself or sell it to another person. The greatest thing about like this way of finding the deals, and if you do get a response and someone does want to sell, it's quite simple. You're the only one who wants to buy, and there's only one seller, so there's less competition, no overbidding. You're first in line. It's exclusivity. But that's just one example, and there are many more that you can have and do. Try to get those off the market deals.
All right, that's actually interesting. This is something that not many of us would think about, like flyering the neighborhood and asking if anybody is going to sell anytime soon. That's really interesting. Definitely keep that in mind, guys, if you're serious about starting with real estate investment.
Yeah.
I'm also very curious, when you made your first property purchase, what are some typical rules to follow? Like, is there a certain percentage down payment? And then how do you go about getting mortgage? And, because people might be a bit overwhelmed, like, how does that all work?
Yeah, I got that. So, I spent some time on really studying like how the system works. So there's a lot of, it's a first buyer's mistake that you could make. I think a couple of things that come from my own experience is the following. So I got my first property, right? And then I did the math. So people told me you need to spend about 20 to 30% of the purchase price. That's like sort of the rule of fist when buying the property, and that's the amount of equity you need to have. So I had that. I had 30,000 euros. That was my entire life savings. I kind of underestimated how actually it's being appraised as a property. So then we have a difference between the how do you call that? The appraisal value, that is if it's empty, and the appraisal value if it's in a rental state. Mm-hmm. So my intention was to buy it and rent it out. Now that difference can be huge. And the one that the banks chooses is always the lower of the two, especially if you start in the game. Now, as you progress along, there's also real estate financing banks where you can actually have unlimited mortgages. It's not income dependent. But just to take back to the previous example, I think the first misconception is that income is the most important thing, but when I started out, that was also the important thing. And I found out that actually the way they appraised it, I made huge mistakes. Because, as I explained in my webinar, I spent 30,000 euros, all my life savings, dude, and I was still short 8,000 euros, which I had to borrow. That's for the first thing. The second thing is that if you want to buy properties in the Netherlands, you're actually bound by a lot of legal constrictions as well, some properties. So I've seen people make the mistake as well that buying a property for investment purposes, they are legally not allowed to be rented out actually. It actually is written in what we call the splitsingsakte, and which is sort of like, it's like a deed where it's, not deed, it's like sort of like, how do you call that thing, the document that the US has, the 10 things?
Like amendments?
Yeah, like, the
clauses.
The Constitution, right?
Constitution.
Yeah, that's the word.
Constitution,
yeah. So it's like sort of like a constitution that has been put on a piece of land.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of varying articles. So I'll give you one of them on the one properties that I own. It says that if the mayor of Rotterdam would ever pass by my house and he says, you have to repaint your walls, the outer walls, I have to do that. So you have all these unique clauses that are in the documents that most people don't know about because they don't read it or do not understand that. And even a lot of, you could say aankoopmakelaars, they might or might not tell you that. So I helped some friends, of course, as well along the way to buy their properties. And we found very unique clauses, something about needing to have a specific color in a certain way, what is connected or not. And those little details, they are important. They will not, sort of like damage you, but just in case, some of them could. So if you could be ending up buying a property, they cannot rent it out, for instance. So there's a lot of law around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually really fascinating. And sort of to add to that point, I used to work as an architect. Some of you probably know. And I do know that when we used to do new projects as well as renovations, there was always like a strict set of guidelines we were provided with from the municipality that determined like the size of your windows, like the doors, and things like paints or how much percentage it needs to be green versus how much percentage can be built on, and the kind of like daylight calculations, how much light there is in the kitchen, and all those little things. So I can definitely relate to you that for someone who's completely new to this and they don't have any background in investing or in architecture, that it could be a little bit overwhelming for them. But in your masterclass and in your program later on, this is something you very much teach in detail, right?
Absolutely. So all the documents that are involved with buying a house, the constitution document, the splitsingsakte, the house rules of a building, everything we teach into details on how to read it, what are the main points you focus upon, because it's also quite standardized documents. You just don't have experience in it yet, so we teach them to how do you read it, what do you pay attention to, etc., so that all of our future investors are prepared for that. And another one is the purchase agreement that you typically sign with a real estate agent. Well, here's the newsflash. Sometimes the real estate agent doesn't even fill it in himself or herself. It actually is being done by an intern who started 3 days ago.
No way. That's an insider information.
So I've seen it happen, and so we also teach people on how to formulate those agreements, because we have that as a standard document, and we just teach people that because I really believe that this level of detail is important for you to learn if you want to know how the business works. So,
yeah, that's really fascinating. So if I'm someone that has, let's say, like 30K in savings, a bit like you, and I want to buy a property, is there kind of a certain rule of thumb I should look out for, like buying a property that's 3 times or 4 times my savings, or is there kind of like a buffer zone with that?
Yeah, so there are a couple of rule of thumbs you could say. So the 20-30% does apply, but you must understand a bit of how the appraisal process works. So that's the first one. Second one, with 30K, and I think that's the main message, it is still possible to buy a property that is below market value. That's one thing, because then you need to have less equity in it. And the other one is that in the Netherlands, because people do think a lot about Amsterdam in terms of prices, also because you have a lot of expats living there.
Yeah.
Outside Amsterdam, there are amazing properties, that you could buy with 30K equity. It's really possible. I mean, last month, I bought one as well. I did end up spending a bit more than 30K, but that's still okay, in terms of investments, especially if you look at the rental prices that is currently in the market, of course.
Yeah. So you would say that maybe as a beginner, don't really think about like investing in the center of Rotterdam, center of Amsterdam, but maybe your second, third property, as you start to also get some cash flow in, you can start to branch out, right?
Absolutely. Actually, we teach most of the real estate investors not to buy in the center for many different reasons, but the return is typically better and you spend less equity. In the game of real estate, equity and money is of course the scarcity. But as you progress along in the journey of a real estate investor, you realize that money is nothing more than money. And what you're going to learn more and more is finding the right deals to buy and to rent out, etc.
Okay.
So, and the other rule of thumb is that you do have repair costs and maintenance. So just remember that as well. It depends a bit on the real estate investor and how expensive the object is. But you could typically take about 5 to 10% of that the rental income as a rule of thumb for maintenance costs. But there are like many more that is there that we help people to understand as well, of course.
Yeah, that's really cool. And one more thing that I'm very curious about asking is, I know in the States this is a very big deal. You probably know Graham Stephan, who's a real estate investor.
Yeah, I do know him.
States. I'm also part of his kind of mentorship group, and there he talks a lot about like house hacking. And basically what that means is, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you buy a property, you sort of live in one half of the property, or let's say in one room of the property, and you rent out the other half. So that way you're practically living for free of charge.
Yeah.
Is that possible here in the Netherlands as well?
It is, to a certain degree. So what Graham and other people talk about in the United States in terms of house hacking is the following. So often they would buy a duplex and indeed sometimes their own house, and then you live in there themselves and then rent out the other parts. Definitely, it is possible in the Netherlands. Just a couple of small things. There is a certain level of legal impact if you start doing that, and it's in the following way. So if you live in the house that you live in yourself and you rent it out, you have something called hospitaverhuur, and it's basically like sort of guest rental. Mm-hmm. So you can only have a maximum officially of 5,500 euros that you can collect as rent without necessarily impacting your interest deduction of owning the home. So in the Netherlands, you pay mortgage, you have the monthly payment, and part of that is interest. So we have a unique system in the Netherlands where you can deduct the interest from your income and therefore pay less tax. But if your rental income does exceed I think about 5,500 this year, which is called hospitaverhuur, then it will be actually taken into your interest rate deduction. So then the question is, would you still want to do that? And that's the answer I can't give because it's your own personal choice. So there is then some legal and tax impact. The other part about you owning a mortgage, officially according to your mortgage document, you are not allowed to rent out because it says that it is a mortgage for you to live in and not to live in and then rent out. So that's a bit different. So just be careful if you do that because according to the contract, most people sign for a house that they will live in by themselves. It is actually not allowed.
All right. Hey, that's a very, very good point for those of you who are wondering if you could do that here as well. Maybe yes, maybe you have to be a bit more careful. Again, it's very important to know all the ins and outs of the legal stuff that goes into real estate investing.
Yeah.
Now, thank you so much for everything you've shared with us. Would you like to let the audience know where they can find you further?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So please follow us on YouTube, the Real Estate Masterclass channel. We will be launching the the English videos soon as well with one of my mentees. His name is Ian. We also have an Instagram account called Real Estate Masterclass _NL, in case you want to follow the latest news and information. And if there's something, just feel free to reach out to us. And if you are interested in following, I think, the English version of the Real Estate Masterclass, feel free to reach out as well. Actually, the Real Estate Masterclass, which is now given in Dutch, was before the corona only given in English because we had so many requests coming in of people wanting to learn how to do real estate investing. And especially, of course, how to learn deals that do not exist online and buy them 10 to 30% cheaper below market price.
Definitely, guys, give it a check out because I know you're interested and it's going to be in English. So if you want to sign up for that, make sure to check out the link in the description. And if you haven't already done so, make sure to smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this type of content. I'm hoping to be doing more great interviews like this one now that things are hopefully getting a little bit better. But I will see you in the next episode, and until then, as usual, don't forget to stay awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. See you soon.